it's fair to say, friend, collaborator. And I honest to God know a few people who do quite so much for so many for nothing but the joy of doing, essentially. Tenement Press was designed, like the rationale for its architectural metaphor was the idea of a vacant space for people to come and play and collaborate and talk and do and make works that can coalesce and emerge out of the door into something else and become something other. And I can't think of a better collaborator than Steve, to be honest. It's been a pleasure to work with him. I hope you've read, will read, relish the book, and Steve Fowler.
Thanks so much. This went a little long, because I have a tendency to talk too much. At the end, I will say thanks for the lovely words that people have said. But now, to the novella itself, you feel a big responsibility when you're launching fiction. It's the first time I've published a fiction book ever. All these books I've done, I'm doing an exhibition soon, and all the publications I've had is 53 wastes of sliced tree. And this is the first time that fiction has come out. And you feel with fiction always that really you should just read. You should just read from the book. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to read a little. I don't know why people are laughing. You see the green, the little post-it note, page 54. So I'm just going to read a little bit. And then you think about it a little bit, and you think you've got to introduce it a little bit. We've all been to readings where the person introduces too much, though. So not too much introduction. Little bit of reading. Little bit of reading. Little bit of introduction. Not too much reading, not too much introduction. You've got to balance it out. A little bit of reading, a little bit of introduction. So, a little bit of introduction. The book starts with a fella working in a museum. Is that fella me? I used to work in a museum. Could be. Dunno. And that fella's waking up in the morning, he's having breakfast with one of his colleagues. His colleague's called Greg. Greg a real fella in a museum? Could be. I don't know. I don't remember writing it. I don't know if anyone else remembers when they wrote the thing that they read tonight or other things, but I don't remember writing it. Is Greg real? I think there's a fella called Greg I used to work with at the museum. Might not be. Anyway, so the fella in the book, he wakes up, he's having his breakfast, he looks over, there's Greg. But before that happens in the book, there's some strange event. Is it a volcano? Some sort of apocalypse. I don't know if anyone's read the book, but the book starts with a description. It's almost like the label in an exhibition in a certain museum in London many years ago for an exhibition about Vesuvius. It's almost like someone wrote down the labels of this exhibition about Vesuvius and then turned it into the opening of a book and pretended it was theirs. I'm not saying that happened. I'm not saying that's an important piece of information to describe. But that's what I could say. The book opens with a description that's a little bit like Vesuvius, like an exhibition that happened in a certain museum. And the protagonist of the book, he wakes up, he's next to a guy called Greg. Is that person me? I don't know. I worked in a museum, it's just pure coincidence. It's important to know that, maybe. Maybe it gives a little bit of insight, a bit of biographical context. A little bit of biographical context. I worked in a museum, this is a book about a man who works in a museum. So he wakes up, he's next to a fellow called Greg. He's saying to Greg, what's my post today? When you work at a real museum, maybe you get posts. I don't know. Bit of a coincidence. Little bit of introduction, biographical information for you, so you understand a little bit about what the novella's about. There's this protagonist. He's working with a fellow called Greg. He gets his post. Then what does he do? Well, they've got to go to muster. So they go into the Great Hall. Not the Great Court, mind. The Great Hall. And what do? They get together in this muster and they're given their post. They go off to their post. And he starts the day thinking, where am I supposed to be? It's a mystery. But there was an apocalypse before any of that happened. I mentioned it before, kind of like a volcano. And that volcano, I should read a little bit, probably. So we know there was like some sort of apocalypse, there was some sort of volcano, there was some sort of terrible event that happened before the start. Alright, okay, so we know there's a chap called Greg, there's a protagonist that might or might not be me, there's an apocalypse that happens before the narrative starts. We know that, so that gives it a little bit of context. But I mean, to properly understand what happens, though, I need to give you a little bit more of an introduction. I'll tell you a little bit more what happens. So, anyway, the chap, he doesn't know quite what he's doing with his day. He doesn't know where he's supposed to be. It's a mysterious day in a mysterious museum. Is it the museum of now? Is it a different time? He has these weird flashbacks to being like a kind of strange paramilitary in an apocalyptic world. And in that apocalyptic world, they feel like the world has been reset, that matter has been disintegrated, and everything has turned into a kind of strange, fluid sub-existence. And they're trying to remember what it was like when the world was normal, when people could get together and share their work and be happy collectively, without the fear of an apocalypse, a volcano, a nuclear bomb. Who knows? I don't know. Did that really happen? Have we reset? No, that definitely didn't happen. That's not based on anyone's real biographical experience. I must have made that up, I don't remember. So what is the purpose then of the museum that happens within the novella? It's trying to get back to a time like this, a happy time, a time full of love and kindness, where you're surrounded by friends, you don't have any brutal fighting to just survive. Maybe the protagonist is remembering these strange meetings out in some strange countryside where he was forced to do terrible things. There's this strange scene somewhere in the book where they're passing around a kind of unnamed meat. Did that really happen? Did I eat human flesh? Not that I remember. I don't remember. That must have been fictional. Some of it's probably based on real experience, some of it's not. So it's in this strange world that's happening, in some strange time, where everything is made up to kind of recreate a happy world, where everyone is okay and they're together in a giant shopping centre in Kingston upon Thames, and they have no real problems that everyone thinks. Anyway, okay. Greg is climbing the stairs out of Mesopotamia. They are crowded and I can only see him because he is so much taller than the bulk of visitors. This is the afternoon push, when the crowds really swell. Oh, sorry. If you'd like to know more about this strange world, it will cost you an unnamed amount of money, paid to Dominic and not me. I want to say thank you so much for coming this evening, and thank you so much for all your kind words. It's so lovely to be surrounded by friends when you sail out some terrible burden on other people into the world. Thank you, Dominic, and thank you, Katerina, for having us. A round of applause for you to finish. Thanks.